Welcome to Hamburgers and Horror, the home of beef, beasts, and brachiosauruses, because today we're looking at the undisputed greatest dinosaur movie of all time, Jurassic Park, baby. This 1993 blockbuster follows a group of people invited to an island theme park with real-life dinosaurs, brought back to life with DNA cloning. While the host assures them the park is safe, it doesn't take long for these resurrected predators to break loose and go on a human hunt. Jurassic Park was, of course, directed by Steven Spielberg, who has brought us masterpieces like Raiders of the Lost Ark, E.T., Schindler's List, and a certain shark movie I may be covering this summer. Spielberg really needs no introduction. His impact on filmmaking and culture at large is immense. The film is based on Michael Crichton's novel of the same name. Crichton, author of The Andromeda Strain and The Terminal Man, also the creator of Westworld and ER, was an outstanding writer, so much so that before this novel was even published, multiple studios were bidding for rights to adapt it to film. Spielberg, with Universal Pictures, ultimately acquired the rights, paying a whopping $1.5 million for it. Crichton was brought on to help write the screenplay, which he co-wrote with David Coep, who has written for Mission Impossible, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, and War of the Worlds. Coep wrote the final draft of the script, which toned down on the violence and changed a few character decisions. It was a pretty long novel, so not everything from it could be covered, so pieces of it are pulled into some of the later films as well. Spielberg sought the very best Hollywood had to offer to bring these dinosaurs to life, ranging from animatronics to cutting-edge digital effects. Stan Winston was brought in to make the life-size dinosaur animatronics. George Lucas supervised the sound design. Dennis Murin of Industrial Light and Magic handled the digital compositing, and paleontologist Jack Horner supervised the designs. They spared no expense. Visual effects and stop-motion extraordinaire Phil Tippett was brought on to create dinosaur stop-motion effects where animatronics weren't viable. His go-motion animatics, which do look really cool, didn't match up to the rest of the effects being used, and Spielberg opted to go with CGI after being impressed by ILM animators Mark Dipp and Steve Williams' computer-generated T-Rex. And to be clear, this CGI was groundbreaking at the time. There's only about 4 minutes of completely CGI dinosaurs in the film, and it still holds up today. With this new technology, it still took the animators 1 full year to create those 4 minutes, but all of the work was definitely worth it. Sam Neill from The Hunt for Red October, A Cry in the Dark, and Sweet Country landed the role of Alan Grant after William Hurt and Harrison Ford turned it down. Jeff Goldblum from Independence Day, The Fly, and Invasion of the Body Snatchers got the role of Ian Malcolm, beating out Jim Carrey, which would have been interesting. Laura Dern from Mask, Blue Velvet, and Wild at Heart was Spielberg's first choice for Ellie Sattler, and she was of course on board. I can't go through everyone's resume, but this cast is full of gems. We've got Samuel L. Jackson, Wayne Knight, Richard Attenborough, B.D. Wong, Martin Ferrero, and of course young Ariana Richards and Joseph Mazzello. After 2 full years of pre-production, they started filming in 1992. They filmed on various islands of Hawaii where a hurricane passed by, so many shots in the rain are actually from that hurricane. Other shooting locations include Universal and Warner Bros. Studios. They spared no expense. While the effects were being done in post, Steven Spielberg fucking funded the creation of the digital theater system, which is basically the beginning of the multi-channel surround sound we listen to today. This movie is responsible for so much. Legendary composer John Williams, who composed for Jaws, Star Wars, E.T., Harry Potter, and so many other films, created the film's iconic score. The film premiered in 1993 on a whopping $63 million budget, but 63 mil is chump change when your movie makes over $1 billion, and Jurassic Park became the highest grossing movie of all time at the time. It also had a humongous marketing campaign, including video games, toy lines, and traveling prop exhibitions, not to mention 4 sequels, with a 5th currently in process. It's heralded as one of the greatest action movies of all time and won a ton of awards and accolades. It's obviously still a well-regarded film today and holds 291% on Rotten Tomatoes. Some consider the human characters a little bland in comparison with all the dino action, which is understandable, but I don't think it's anything too severe, but I'll keep an eye out for it when I go through. I could really go on and on about all the cool production stuff that went into Jurassic Park, but I know y'all are here for the dinosaurs. I hope you didn't forget your Barbasol. because we're watching Jurassic Park. The movie opens with a short and simple title card as Jurassic Park's game warden Robert Muldoon and a bunch of his burly employees watch some big cargo emerge through the trees. We're on Isla Nublar, a fictional island out in the Pacific Ocean where these boys are unloading a velociraptor. We don't see the dino, but its scary sounds and Muldoon's caution tells us she's a bad mamma jamma. They raise the gate for her to enter her new enclosed home in the park, but the raptor slams against her cage, knocking it away from the gate and knocking gatekeeper Joffrey down into snatching range. Muldoon grabs a hold of Joffrey as the other employees try tasing the raptor. That's not enough to stop her and Muldoon commands them to shoot her, but it's too late as Muldoon loses his grip and Joffrey loses his life. Jump to a lawyer named Donald Gennaro being pulled across a river in the Dominican Republic, where the park is excavating for amber. We learn Joffrey's family is suing the park for his death, which has raised safety concerns and spooked investors, whom Gennaro will be representing during a safety inspection of the park. Gennaro says if 2 dinosaur experts sign off on the park's safety, the investors are willing to play ball again. They specifically want Alan Grant, but Juanito says they'll never get him away from a dig he's currently on, as we zoom in on a prehistoric mosquito. We hop over to Montana to see that dig for ourselves, where we meet Dr. Alan Grant and Dr. Ellie Sattler. Dr. Grant hates computers, but loves velociraptors, and proceeds to use one's 6-inch retractable claw to terrify a naysaying little boy. During his little boy scaring, we learn that dinosaurs are more bird than reptile, T-Rexes don't see you if you don't move, but raptors can, and that raptors are very intelligent and hunt in coordinated packs. Alan and Ellie discuss his dislike of kids when a helicopter rolls in, disrupting their raptor skeleton. Alan finds a champagne thief in his trailer, and his name is John Hammond, aka the guy who has been funding their dig. That settles down the angry little paleontologists, and he tells them all about his exciting new island. He describes it as a nature preserve and plans to open it soon if he's able to get his investors back on board. He asks Alan and Ellie to visit the park and give it their endorsement, as they are each the top paleontologists and paleobotanists in their fields. They ask why their opinions would matter about a park, but sly Hammond doesn't quite explain. Alan and Ellie are hesitant, but Hammond's offer to fund their dig for another 3 years gets them on board quick. Over in Costa Rica, we meet Dennis Nedry and... what's his name?
Dodson! Dodson! We've got Dodson here!
Dodson hands Nedry $750,000 and we learn he's a saboteur. Nedry is a computer programmer at the park and he's being paid $50,000 a pop for each dinosaur embryo he steals from the lab. Dodson's company even has a James Bond Barbasol can to preserve the embryos during the heist. Our protagonists are being flown to the island and they meet Ian Malcolm, an eccentric mathematician who specializes in chaos theory. Gennaro has brought him to help evaluate the park's ability to get out of control, and he quickly gets to flirting with Sattler. They arrive at the island and hit some turbulence, and Grant realizes he has 2 female ends on his seatbelt, but he makes it work. I wonder what that could foreshadow. I can't play it due to copyright purposes, but this score is so good. The chopper lands and they hop into some custom whips as Hammond explains the extensive safety precautions to Gennaro. They stop in a clearing and Alan and Ellie finally understand why they've been brought to the park. 'Cause it's a motherfucking dinosaur park! Look at that beautiful Brachiosaurus. Grant is completely enamored and Gennaro is sold on this obvious moneymaker. Grant collapses when he learns they have a T-Rex and Hammond finally tells them where they are.
Welcome to Jurassic Park.
Grant asks how he did this and they head to the park's visitor center. Here they learn from multiple Hammonds and Mr. DNA the science behind making dinosaurs. They were able to extract dinosaur blood from mosquitoes encased in amber like the one from earlier. The DNA sequences aren't perfectly recorded, so Jurassic Park scientists have used frog DNA to fill in any gaps. The tour moves over to show off the lab where unfertilized emu eggs are implanted with dino DNA. This is too exciting for Grant, Sattler, and Malcolm, and they break loose to see up close. Hammond gives no fucks and introduces them to Dr. Henry Wu, who says they're just in time to watch a birth. A baby velociraptor hatches, and Hammond explains he has been present for every birth to help the dinosaurs be more trusting of humans. Malcolm asks about the ones born in the wild, but Wu explains that the dinosaurs are engineered to only be female, so there is no reproduction outside of the lab. Malcolm doesn't buy it, expressing his belief that life is chaotic and can't be contained or truly controlled.
Life, finds a way.
Grant wants to see the adult raptors, but only gets a view of the steer they're having for lunch. They meet Muldoon, who is quick to share his fear of raptors, describing them as lethal at 8 months old, as fast as cheetahs, and incredible jumpers. They used to have 8 raptors, but the most recent one that was born is apparently the biggest and most clever. She killed all but 2 of the others, and has shown she's capable of problem solving, such as testing the electric fence for weaknesses. Time for lunch, and Gennaro is super excited for the profits this place will earn. Malcolm is far more skeptical, laying in on Hammond for playing with this incredible knowledge so childishly and never considering the ethics of it. Sattler joins in, pointing out poisonous plants in the lobby put there because they look nice, and she agrees these life forms can't be controlled so easily. Even Grant agrees they should expect the unexpected, which is why we're adding some kids to the mix. Lex and Tim are Hammond's grandchildren, and they'll be joining the group on their journey through the park in these self-driving electric cars. Tim has read Grant's book and starts grilling him with questions. He's able to lose the young boy, but Sattler traps him with Lex to kickstart character development. Hammond will be observing from the control room, and Muldoon warns of a tropical storm on the way. Engineer Ray Arnold starts the tour, and the explorers cross the epic gates into Jurassic Park. The Richard Kiley voiced vehicle explains they are passing the Dilophosaurus exhibit, but the venom-spitting carnivore is a no-show. Ray complains about the many glitches in their system, which are primarily blamed on Nedry. Nedry simply complains about his salary and unappreciation, and the tour reaches the T-Rex exhibit. They try to tempt the Rex with a tasty goat, which vegetarian Lex isn't a fan of. Lady Tyrannosaurus no-shows as well, and Malcolm taunts Hammond and his boring-ass tour. While Malcolm continues flirting with Sattler, Alan jumps out of the vehicle to check something out. While Hammond stops the cars, Nedry plans his embryo heist. Alan leads the group out into the exhibit, which I'd say is the exact definition of a safety issue, but Ellie doesn't mind as the kids swarm him. The reason Grant leapt from the tour? He wanted to pet a triceratops, which is a pretty good reason. This sweet girl isn't feeling too good, and Sattler somehow immediately identifies her symptoms are from her diet. She identifies a toxic plant and wants to check the dinosaur's poo for seed pods. Because guests have absolutely free reign inside the park, she gets to dig through shit. Also, the tropical storm is almost upon them, so the tour will have to be cut short. Sattler sticks around with the Triceratops while the rest of the group gets moving. The tropical storm has landed, so the final boat heading out is leaving sooner than Nedry planned. He starts his plan early, awkwardly disguising his security system shutdown as a minor update. With the cameras off and doors unlocked, he rushes into the embryo chamber. He steals one DNA sample of all 15 species on the island and loads them into his Barbasol can. Ray panics as fences all over the park turn off, but Nedry is already on his way out, pushing through the no longer electrified gates. He loses control in the rain and takes out the directions, as Ray angrily fails to break through his codes. Grant tries to steer Malcolm's sexual interest away from Sattler, and their explorers halt to a stop in front of the T-Rex feeding ground. The phone and radio are out, and everybody is nervous, except Tim, who's having a great time with some night vision goggles under the seat. Tim is the first to notice the iconic bad vibrations as earth-shaking footsteps get closer. They realize the goat is missing, or at least part of it, because the T-Rex has finally arrived. Damn it, those animatronics are incredible. Gennaro fucking bolts to hide in the little boy's room.
When you gotta go, you gotta go.
The T-Rex wastes no time busting through its puny fence and gives its first incredible roar. Grant tells Malcolm to stay still because of the old movement equals vision thing, but Lex didn't get the memo. Her dumbass starts shining a flashlight for literally no good reason, which gets the attention of Miss Rexy. They struggle to turn off the light, and the T-Rex busts through the glass ceiling to have some pint-sized snacks. She can't get to them though, and opts to just destroy the car instead. She pushes the Explorer down into the mud as Grant hops out with a flare to distract the hungry beast. He's successful until Malcolm joins in on the fun and gets chased by the dino. She knocks Malcolm into the outhouse, knocking him out and knocking down Gennaro's porcelain kingdom. Rexy gets her first kill, snatching Gennaro and chomping him up. But she's still hungry and sets her sights on Grant and the kids. Alan tells Lex to freeze, but that doesn't stop the Rex from knocking the Tim-filled car around. They get dangerously close to a nonsensical ravine, which they end up rappelling down. They very narrowly avoid death by car, and Tim plummets down into the forest below. Satisfied with her destruction, Rexy roars and heads out to find other snacks. Meanwhile, Sattler has made it back to the control room, and Hammond sends her and Muldoon to rescue his grandchildren. Ray says he can't get back online without Nedry, who went the wrong way and is lost deep inside the park. He fucks up and goes through a guardrail, but he isn't too far from the road below. Before he can pull the car out with the winch cable, cartoon character slips down the bank and loses his glasses, and does some Scooby-Doo shit with a Dilophosaurus. Nedry patronizes the dino, not considering it dangerous, and gets back to work. But the Dilophosaurus shows off its frilled neck and spits its previously mentioned venom at the embryo thief. The Dilophosaurus gets a headshot before Nedry Homer Simpsons into the car and loses his Barbasol can in the flood. Nedry gets into the car only to find he has a hungry hitchhiker aboard and is eaten while his would-be fortune is buried. Grant and Lex have made it to the lower level, and after calming the hysterical Lex, he locates Tim's new treehouse. He climbs up and talks to Tim into joining him on the ground, not realizing he's turning the wheels holding them up. They race the Explorer down to the ground, once again nearly avoiding getting crushed by it. Sattler and Muldoon reach the T-Rex attack zone and find Malcolm amongst the debris and Gennaro blood. They load him up and Ellie teleports down below to the other car. At least she knows they're alive. Malcolm feels a familiar vibration, and teleporting Sattler and Muldoon hop in just in time to start a fantastic chase scene. Muldoon hits the gas, and after a fallen tree slowdown, they manage to escape the hungry Rex. Grant is fucking tired and decides to hunker down in a nearby tree, where they get some sweet Brachiosaurus lullabies. They snuggle up together, and Grant reminds us we haven't seen the Raptors yet. Alan comforts the kids, promising to keep watch while they sleep. Hammond is drowning his sorrows in ice cream and tells Sattler how he got his start at an imposter flea circus. He wanted Jurassic Park to be something real, and he still doesn't see just how flawed the idea is. Sattler tries to hammer in that he'll never be able to control power of this magnitude, and he should focus on the people he's put in danger. Grant and the kids get a wake-up call from the Brachiosaurus, and even scared-ass Lex can admit how cute the big cow is. Sadly for Lex, the Brachio is allergic to cowards and sneezes all over her. They make their way through the park, and Tim taunts his computer-loving sister, and she describes herself as a hacker. I wonder if that'll come into play. Grant finds a bunch of hatched dinosaur eggs, meaning there has been some unauthorized breeding. He realizes certain species of frogs are capable of changing sex when necessary, or in other words, life found a way. Malcolm is being sexy, and Hammond has decided they need to shut down the entire system to reboot it. Ray doesn't want to risk it, and Muldoon wants to tap into one of their more severe precautions. The dinosaurs were engineered without a certain amino acid and will die if the park doesn't supplement them with it, but Hammond absolutely refuses. He convinces Ray to shut it all down, and it actually seems to work. One problem though, the shutdown trips the circuit breakers, which are outside on the other side of the compound. Grant and the kids run into a herd of Gallimimus and hide behind a log to avoid getting trampled. Turns out the herd was running from our favorite T-Rex, and Grant nearly gets off watching it kill a Gallimimus. It's taken too long for Ray to return, and Sattler and Muldoon arm up to turn the power on themselves. Hammond will explain how to do it via walkie-talkie, and the dynamic duo heads out. Muldoon quickly realizes the Raptors escaped during the shutdown, as it was one of the few Nedry left on. They're not far from the shed, but Muldoon realizes they're being hunted. He tells Sattler to run for the shed while he approaches a raptor he sees. She books it into the shed without too much trouble, and Hammond starts directing her through the building. Grant and the kids have reached an electric fence, and he gives them a good scare pretending to be electrocuted. A T-Rex roar gets them hustling up the fence, while Hammond once again proves to be completely useless. Malcolm takes over and gets her to the circuit breaker, just as Grant and the kids reach the halfway point of the fence. Ellie charges the system up, which sets off an alarm on the fence. As Sattler turns on the systems one by one, Tim gets scared and refuses to continue climbing down. The electricity turns back on and Tim gets yeeted right off the fence. Tim stops breathing and dies. Just kidding, Grant resuscitates him and they keep moving. Things seem to be going for the better until Sattler is attacked by a velociraptor. She manages to keep it behind a door and even finds Ray's severed arm. The chain link isn't lasting long, but Sattler manages to limp outside. But it isn't any safer out there as Muldoon stalks a raptor of his own. But similarly to how Grant described, he realizes this raptor is just a decoy. Muldoon gets mauled to death, and Grant and co have made it to the restaurant. He's really getting better with these kids. Sort of. He leaves them to chow down while he looks for the others, and he finds Ellie immediately. The child feast is interrupted when Lex sees the shadow of a raptor approaching. They hide in the kitchen, but Chef Raptor is hot on their trail. Grant joins the other adults, and Sattler says there are only 2 raptors to deal with unless they know how to open doors. Damn it! Chef Raptor calls her homie and they start their child search. The raptors tip-tap their claws and knock some pans over, and a fallen ladle gives the children away. The raptors are about to have a Tim Pot pie, but Lex distracts them and stows away in a cabinet. The raptor mistook her reflection for the real thing and gives itself a concussion. Tim makes a run for the freezer and only survives when the raptor slips on melting ice. With the help of Lex, they are able to lock it away just as Concussion Raptor wakes up. They run into Grant and Sattler and they rush to the control room. Concussion Raptor isn't far behind and Grant and Sattler combined can barely hold it back. Remember how Lex is a self-proclaimed hacker? Yeah, that was a thing, I guess. She hops on the dinosaur computer instead of grabbing the big-ass gun and hacks her way right through the supposedly complex system and locks the door. Lex enables the phone and Grant tells Hammond to call the mainland for help. The raptor finds a window and Grant lets off some shots, but they ultimately flee to the rafters. The raptor jumps up and nearly chomps on Lex, but she's pulled up just in time. They hop out above the skeletons in the visitor center, but the raptor is already waiting for them. They jump onto the dino skellies because that makes a ton of sense, and they all yeehaw around on various bones. Everyone falls to the floor just in time for the maintenance shed raptor to join the fun. The raptors surround the group, and just when all hope seems lost, Mrs. Tyrannosaurus somehow enters the building and munches down on one of the raptors. The other raptor attacks the Rex, giving our heroes enough time to escape in a perfectly timed ride. Hammond finally admits the park is a failure as the T-Rex launches the raptor through her ancestor's skeleton and gives us one more badass roar. Hell yeah. The survivors reach the helipad with a chopper waiting, and Hammond looks back at his absolute shit show of a theme park. They fly the fuck home, and Ellie is happy to see how caring Grant is for the kids now. Maybe they'll have some now. They don't. What's up, Pelicans? Things end on a positive note as the helicopter flies into the sunset to end this iconic movie. And that's Jurassic Park. This movie was a landmark achievement for filmmaking, and there's not a ton I can say that hasn't been said 1,000 times already. It wasn't just a great film during its time, it still holds up really well today, and I'd say by far it's still the best Jurassic Park movie. What's most impressive to me is the CGI holds up better than some we are getting in the 2020s. I don't mean to knock movies that have bad CGI, as they clearly don't have the astronomical budget that Jurassic Park did, but it's just an acknowledgement of how hard the animators and engineers worked. The animatronics obviously kick ass, and they are some of Stan Winston's greatest achievements in a long list of amazing works. And while I know we're all here for the dinos, I really enjoy the human characters in Jurassic Park as well. Their very distinct viewpoints and discourses help keep the non-dino portions interesting. Alan Grant's character arc isn't anything mind-blowing, but it's still a fun little addition to keep things moving. The only other character to really have an arc through the film is John Hammond, and he mostly just had to come to terms with the fact he really fucked up. But it's still sad to see his dream crushed by the end. He did have good intentions. As a kid, I never realized just how useless he is. Behind his fantastic facade, he's kind of just a sad, bumbling old man making one last-ditch effort to be remembered. And y'all know I'm not crazy about kids and movies, and I could rant about how annoying Lex is throughout, but she and Tim are more integral to the plot than most instances, so they get a bit of a pass. Except that stupid hacker shit, that's the one time Jurassic Park really falls into Trope City. The movie gets a little clumsy by the end, and there's a few nonsensical transitions or character decisions, but I'm mostly nitpicking at this point. Jurassic Park is obviously chock full of great dino moments, but I do wish there was just one or two more great kills in the movie. Ray Arnold was going to get a chase and death sequence, but that aforementioned hurricane actually destroyed the set for it, so I can't really blame them for that. I also just love Wayne Knight in this. He's always a treat. Jurassic Park is a ton of fun, and it actually has a level of earnestness that you don't see in many blockbusters, the Jurassic World movies included. Everybody involved absolutely brings their best, and while it isn't necessarily a horror movie, I'd say it's mandatory viewing for anybody who likes to see cool shit. Well, that's about it. I don't know if or when I'll be covering the other Jurassic movies, but it was a lot of fun to talk about this classic blockbuster. Next week we'll be looking at another movie that captivated me as a child, but it's on a bit of a lower budget. We're looking at 2002's Dog Soldiers. I haven't seen it in over a decade, so I'm interested to see how it holds up. Thank you all for joining me, and an extra thank you to my patrons. As always, I'm Noah Hook, and thanks for watching Hamburgers and Horror. Stay safe out there. Thanks for watching my review of Jurassic Park. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe so you can keep up with my weekly horror reviews. And if you want to help support the channel further, be sure to check out my Patreon account. You'll be able to vote for future movies and franchises I cover on the channel. Thanks y'all.